Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to talk about the reasons I believe that the Tau Empire have fallen in popularity, especially in the last few years amongst fans. Now, as somebody who got into the Warhammer 40k universe about 20 years ago, I was there when the Tau were sort of at their peak early days popularity. And as someone who played as the Space Marines, mainly Ultramarines, and Orcs, I can tell you right now that I did not like the Tau. They were not a faction that I enjoyed coming up against, but it didn't mean I couldn't appreciate them as a unit or as a group. But today, we're going to look at a few other things rather than just the popularity or the views I had through my eyes of the Tau. And we're going to look at a few things that may point towards why they're not as popular as they once may have been. So let's dive into the story of the Tau Empire, from thrilling newcomers to niche underdogs. The Tau were formally introduced into the Warhammer 40k universe in around October 2001, around the transition to the third edition of the Warhammer 40k Codex. Their lore framed them as a young, technology-advanced species operating on the galactic fringes, advocating their philosophy of the greater good. Their visual design broke from the gothic medieval aesthetic of many Warhammer 40k armies. They featured sleek battle suits, clean lines, high-tech rifles, and strong mecha anime influences. From a hobby standpoint, this made them incredibly attractive. They looked different, they had a strong cool factor, and for a time, they offered something fresh. As the Tau codices rolled out, for instance, the 7th edition codex released in October 2015, the army enjoyed some very strong interest. The combination of futuristic aesthetics, big walking suits, and an attractive theme helped them to gain player numbers. On the tabletop side, they offered a playstyle oriented around long range firepower and advanced technology, which appealed to many players who preferred shooting, tactics, and model painting over melee brawls. They gained traction in the meta for periods when their rules and army lists allowed strong, long range dominance. This period can be seen as their peak: strong brand identity, good hobby interest, and real competitive presence on the tabletop. However, over time, a number of factors combined to reduce their popularity. Let's break them down. First up, we have their rules and their meta issues. The Tau have long been defined by a heavy focus on shooting and a weakness in melee and psychic phases. They are very specifically a shooting only army. They do not play in 50% of the phases, and you might as well skip right over them when those phases do occur. This can lead to gameplay that many consider non-interactive or less fun, especially in faster editions where melee or psychic interaction is expected. Also, some lists become dominant in particular editions, giving them a cheesy reputation. Basically, one reason the Tau gets a lot of hate is that the Tau Empire is a foil to the Imperium in their short spike of being OP for their style of play, which is just sit back and shoot. When power levels dropped or when the lists became less effective, players drifted away due to the perception of a lower visibility or boring gameplay. This was certainly my experience with the Tau armies, especially in the early days. I could have as many Terminators and as many tanks on the field that I wanted, but I wouldn't get anywhere close to the Tau, and that made it quite boring. I won't begrudge them being good at long range play, but it definitely didn't help in my eyes being able to play against them, and I certainly didn't want to play against them when I was in the option not to. The second major factor in all of this is the sense amongst many players that the Tau don't feel like they belong in the grimdark setting of 40k. Their bright, clean look and optimistic or at least differently toned lore made them somewhat of an outlier. From a fluff perspective, the 40k setting doesn't lend itself to there being any good factions. The Tau presented as above that, and it raises eyebrows for players invested in the grimdark. Another factor in all of this are the lore and support issues that Games Workshop have provided or not provided to the Tau. Players have complained that the Tau have been sidelined in lore developments and haven't received as much fresh content or narrative prominence compared to other factions. They've complained that there's barely any new lore, there's no novels, probably one of the last races to get a codex, and they vanished into the Nexus and didn't come out the other side of it. Model support and updates for auxiliaries and alliances have also been perceived as lagging behind. Let's take, for example, the Vespids or the Croods. They don't really get revamps or new models, they just sort of linger there for everybody to wait on till the very end or back of the queue. The combination of all the previous points has led to a community perception issue. The Tau have been subjects of memes, jokes, and dislikes, sometimes entirely tongue in cheek, sometimes more serious. And it's been a fixture in the 40k universe for 20 years. Hating on the Tau or any Xenos race is the norm, and the Tau just seem to get the worst of it. And this toxic stigma can discourage new players from choosing the faction, and it reduces their numbers in the player base. Essentially, then, we can surmise why the Tau have fallen off in strength amongst the player base in a few different ways. Their gameplay niche. Their core strength, range shooting, became overemphasized, while other phases, melee and psychic predominantly, were weak, making them less attractive or less fun for many people, either to play against or to play as. Then there's been the meta shifts, where their rules were strong, they were seen as overpowered, and when they were weak, they were seen as a non-viable option, and both extremes hurt them. Then there's their aesthetic mismatch when you compare them throughout the 40k universe. Their clean, high-tech, optimistic tone design clashed with the grimdark expectations of the rest of 40k. Then you have their lack of support and their neglect in the lore base. Less narrative prominence and support compared to other factions, it reduces player engagement and visibility. And then finally, you've got the community stigma. Persistent jokes, gatekeeping, and a sense of Tau players know what they signed up for discourages newcomers and older player retention. So, what might the future hold for the Tau Empire? Well, despite their decline in broad popularity, the Tau are by no means extinct. They still have dedicated players, hobbyists painting their models, and strict lore fans. If the faction receives strong rule updates, fresh narrative content, or even models that reconnect with their identity, they could see renewed growth. In fact, revitalizing a faction often happens when the developers re emphasize their unique strengths or fix past weaknesses. Take, for example, the Ultramarines and the Space Marines as a faction overall. They've been revitalized in the last few years through Games Workshop's persistent increase in their updated models, new codices, video game lore, etc. The Tau Empire had a video game brought out in the early 2000s to support their release. It just never took off, and to be honest, they haven't really been kept up to. So if Games Workshop were to go back in and say, right, let's give them another chance, that could really help the Tau Empire and their player base get a foothold and come back into the light of 40k. From the booming newcomer to the niche underdog, the Tau Empire's journey in Warhammer 40,000 is a cautionary tale. Great aesthetics and rules can attract players, but unless support, identity, and community fit align, even a cool faction can fade from the limelight. If you like what you saw, leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below. What's your experience with the Tau? Did you play with them back in the day, or are you thinking of starting with them now? Remember guys, until next time, for the greater good.